Jon Stewart is calling out Jake Tapper over his new book about former President Joe Biden. The comedian is questioning why Tapper didn't report on Biden's mental decline sooner after Tapper told his audience, quote, "You will not believe what we found out."
Don't news people have to tell you what they know when they find it out? Isn't that the difference between news and a secret? Breaking news in a week.
Tapper has been accused by some of being part of a broader media cover-up over President Biden's mental fitness while in office.
I'm interested in the Biden stuff because Jake Tapper's book Original Sin comes out today, which I'm looking forward to reading. And this book talks about his inner circle and how his inner circle kept his mental decline and health diagnosis from others. So I think they announced President Biden's prostate diagnosis to get in front of that book, some of the other stuff that's coming out, and whatever may be in that book. And I'm looking forward to reading it because I want to see if people like Jake Tapper, hold themselves and their networks like CNN accountable for how much they didn't report on, because they're all complicit in not calling a thing in regards to President Biden.
Regarding his health, you mean? Regarding his health?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
I am so sick of all of this Joe Biden consternation. What Joe Biden did or didn't do, what reporters did or didn't do. And now you're still litigating something, a person who's not even in the fucking Oval Office anymore. He's not there. Why aren't you talking about the person who's there now? Who is not, doesn't seem to have so much great mental capacity. And yet Democrats are stuck on Joe Biden? Are you out of your mind? This is why Democrats lose. The answer should be Joe Biden is no longer our president. Donald Trump is our president, and that's who we should be focusing on. Why are we focusing on this? And why are we talking about an old man who has cancer, prostate cancer? Why are you kicking someone when they are down? It's absolutely ridiculous. The history books will show if they believe that Joe Biden was selfish, if they believe Joe Biden should have dropped out. Perhaps he should have. But that is not the question right now. That is in the fucking rearview mirror. What are you doing?
My expectation that President Biden is going to meet this moment with the courage and resilience that he's consistently shown. Seems to me entirely inappropriate that at this moment in time, when President Biden is dealing with a serious and aggressive form of cancer, there are Republicans who are peddling conspiracy theories and want us to look backward at a time when they actually are taking health care away from the American people. No, as House Democrats, we're going to look forward. They literally are trying to take.
I'm a terrible note taker. My notes look like doctor's handwriting mixed with abstract art. And my type notes?
Healthcare away from millions of Americans at this very moment in the dead of night. And Republicans want to fan the flames of conspiracy theories at this moment? No, thank you.
Or Hawk in this book. Take a look.
Let's talk about what's going on, because Original Sin, the book claiming that Democrats covered up President Biden's declining condition, is out today. It's co-written by Jake Tapper, and Joe Biden's granddaughter posted her review ahead of its release, claiming it's all lies, and it relies on unnamed anonymous sources pushing a self-serving false narrative that absolves them of any responsibility for our current national nightmare. The Daily Show's Jon Stewart weighed in about the book last night as well.
He sits with allies like Canada and the UK and targeting his political opponents.
Preach.
And that not only that, but he also said that Joe Biden has stage 9 cancer. Oh, really? Where did he come up with that? When is Jake Tapper going to write a book about the cognitive decline of the person who is in charge right now?
I would like to respond to that, because a factor in why we're in the situation we're in is because Joe Biden decided to stay in the race. And I want to speak to Jake Tapper and Alec Thompson specifically because I'm friends with both of them, colleagues with both of them. And I don't think there is anyone who could credibly accuse, especially Jake Tapper, of not critically covering Donald Trump for the last 10 years. He's one of the top journalists in this country. He moderated that debate, by the way. This is where I take issue with some folks on the left. We stand with journalists. We stand with the free press when they're going after their opponents like Donald Trump. But when they critically cover Democrats as, oh no, they're lying. It's fairy dust. It's not true.
I just want to point out that was his granddaughter.
And by the way, with the family,
Okay.
I take exception.
Okay.
Anyone's going to
Yeah.
defend their
Yeah.
family.
Okay.
But with political figures who are coming out and attacking these two journalists, how is that pro-democracy? How is it pro-fourth estate to
Well,
say,
wait a second.
oh, but when you come after Democrats,
I saw him the
suddenly
other
you're a
day, and
liar.
all he's doing is hawking his book on the CNN. And he's flanked by other people, Ryan Stelter and Van Jones, also hawking his book. When did CNN become a place to hawk your book? Is Wolf Blitzer coming out with a cookbook?
But by the way, the reason he didn't publish it at the time to respond to the Jon Stewart of it, people said they weren't willing to talk on the record at the time because of fear of retribution. And I think that speaks to a bigger problem in our government. The people who work for powerful figures feel like they cannot come out with the truth about their concerns and they have to wait till later,
And
whether
honestly,
it's Trump or Biden.
This list that Joy has, the way you get a focus on that is when you win elections. And the only people that were coming out on the record critical of President Biden was when Representative Dean Phillips ran and said, until we get someone better to come out and run against Biden, who he raised concerns about, about Biden in the Democratic Party. He said, until we're willing to have this conversation out loud, the special counsel, Robert Hur, who took like the biggest attack when all he said was, there are some things here that are concerning on these tapes. Now they've been revealed and everyone's like, let's not focus back on that. The problem is there's a trust issue here. There's a massive trust.
Hey guys, sorry about that. I wanted to show the cope that Jake Tapper and the Democrats are having in this civil war that we see lately. We are going to be reacting to Elon Musk schooling a Qatar interviewer today, very woke, trying to get these gotcha moments, and he was just too smart and too on his game to let her dictate where the interview was going. But isn't it funny that the left always is the party of acceptance, believe all reporters, until it actually doesn't benefit them? There's no covering up for Biden at this point, and I believe that Jake Tapper is trying to make money on it when he was part of the problem the whole time. And it just shows the pure hypocrisy and just how fake these people are on much of the left. And then when you go against their own, they just shut this person down, call them a bigot, say they're not an ally, and then just try to kick them out of the party. Because if you don't go 100% in with them, you are the enemy and they will not accept you. Anyways, let me transfer it to X, and then we're getting started on the interview. I already watched it today, and I thought Elon was brilliant. I think this woman was out of her league when it came to the questions she was asking them. Please like, comment, subscribe on Mama Doll K and Politics and Life. I have both channels tagged. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let's get it started, y'all.
Musk, welcome to Qatar Economic Forum. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and very pleased to have you with us. You know, among those here in the audience in Doha are some you will know, people who have backed you financially over the years. Since you last spoke here in 2022, a lot has changed in your life. You're not only running multiple companies, you were doing that then, but now you also have a role in government. So first of all, I hope you won't mind if from time to time I have to move you from one topic to another because we have a lot to cover in the time we have. That will be all right? Okay.
Yeah,
well, let's start then with exactly the fact that you now have this combination of being a CEO and having a role as a government advisor. Tell me about your week. How does it work? What's the split of your time?
Well, I travel a lot. So I was in Silicon Valley yesterday morning. I was in LA yesterday evening. I'm in Austin right now. I'll be in DC tomorrow. I'll be there. Having dinner with the president tomorrow night, I believe. And then a whole bunch of cabinet secretary meetings, and then back to Silicon Valley on Thursday night.
But I mean, the balance of your time, is it, well, clearly it's a lot, but is it still the case, as you said a while ago, that it's about 1 to 2 days a week on your government work?
Yeah, that's correct.
And what does that mean for your corporate life? Because if we start with Tesla, the company has suffered in recent months what you've called blowback. So what is your plan for turning that around, the declining sales picture? And by what stage do you think you're going to be able to turn it around?
Oh, it's already turned around.
Give me some evidence for that. I've just been looking at the sales figures for Europe in April, which show very significant declines in the big markets.
Europe is our weakest market. We're strong everywhere else. No, our sales are doing well at this point. We don't anticipate any meaningful sales shortfall, and obviously the stock market recognizes that, since we're now back over $1 trillion in market cap. So clearly the market is aware of the situation. So it's already turned around.
But sales still down compared to this time last year.
In Europe.
In Europe, okay. And
yes, but that's true of all manufacturers. There's no exceptions.
Does that mean that you're not going to be able? Does that mean
European market is quite weak?
Okay, but you would acknowledge, wouldn't you, that what you are facing, okay, let's just take it as Europe, what you are facing is a significant problem. This Tesla was an incredibly aspirational brand. People identified with it. They saw it as being at the forefront of the climate crisis, and now people are driving around with stickers in their cars saying, I bought this before we knew Elon was crazy.
And there are also people who are buying it because Elon's crazy, or however they may view it. So yes, we've lost some sales perhaps on the left, but we've gained them on the right. The sales numbers at this point are strong, and we see no problem with demand.
So what do you?
And I mean, you can just look at the stock price. If you want the best inside information, the stock market analysts have that, and our stock wouldn't be trading near all-time highs if it was not. If things weren't in good shape. They're fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I was citing sales figures rather than share price. Well, tell me then how committed you are to Tesla. Do you see yourself, and are you committed to still being the chief executive of Tesla in 5 years' time?
Yes.
No doubt about that at all.
Well, no, I might die.
Okay, short of that.
I can't be CEO if I'm dead. So there's a slight amount of.
Does that mean that the value of your pay doesn't have any bearing on your decision?
Well, that's not really a subject of discussion in this forum. I think obviously there should be compensation for, if there's something incredible is done, that compensation should match that something incredible was done. But I'm confident that whatever some activist posing as a judge in Delaware happens to do will not affect the future compensation.
This is the judge who twice struck down the $56 billion pay package that was awarded to you. I think the value on the current value of stock options. Yeah.
Not a judge. The activist who is cosplaying a judge in a Halloween costume.
Okay, that's your characterization. I think yes. On the current value of stock options, I think the actual
justice according to the law.
On the current value of stock options, I think the value of that pay package stands at about $100 billion. Are you saying you are relaxed about the value of your future pay package? Your decision to be committed to Tesla for the next 5 years, as long as you are still with us on this planet, is completely independent of pay?
No.
It's not independent. So pay is a relevant factor then to your commitment to Tesla?
A sufficient voting control such that I cannot be ousted by activist investors is what matters to me. And I've said this publicly many times. But let's not have this whole thing be a discussion of my alleged pay. It's not a money thing. It's a reasonable control thing over the future of the company, especially if we're building millions, potentially billions of humanoid robots. I can't be sitting there and wanting to get tossed out by, for political reasons, by activists. That would be unacceptable. That's all that matters. Now let's move on.
Okay. Well, just one question.
Let's move on.
Well,
Tell her what's up.
one question before we move on to other companies, which is that I wonder if some of what has happened to Tesla in the last few months, did you take it personally?
Yes.
And did it make you
Kind of dumb
regret any
questions
or
are
think
these?
twice about your political endeavors? Because it
Well,
is.
I did what needed to be done. The violent antibody reaction, and I'm not someone who's ever committed violence, and yet massive violence was committed against my companies. Massive violence was threatened against me. Who are these people? Why would they do that? How wrong can they be?
They're paid activists funded by George Soros and the Democrat Party. Also through USAID, just like our taxes were funding through USAID to literally push propaganda to the people. So our own taxpayer dime was spent by our government to fund propaganda through USAID. Every American should be infuriated.
They're on the wrong side of history, and that's an evil thing to do. To go and damage some poor innocent person's car, to threaten to kill me. What's wrong with these people? I've not harmed anyone. So something needs to be done about them. And a number of them are going to prison, and they deserve it. And more will.
You're referring to the attacks on Tesla showrooms, but I think
Firing bullets into showrooms and burning down cars is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Those people will go to prison, and the people that funded them and organized them will also go to prison. Don't worry.
But wouldn't you?
We're coming for you.
Wouldn't you?
I love that.
But wouldn't you acknowledge that some of the people who turned against Tesla in Europe were upset at your politics, and very few of them would have been violent in any way. They just objected to what they saw you say or do politically.
Well, it's certainly fine to object to political things, but it's not fine to resort to violence and hanging someone in effigy and death threats. That's obviously not okay. That's absurd. That is in no way justifiable at all, in any way, shape, or form. And some of the legacy media nonetheless have sought to justify it, which is unconscionable. Shame on them.
Let's talk about your other companies then and other business areas, SpaceX. I saw that you said in a speech at the West Point Military Academy recently that the future of warfare is AI and drones. And obviously defense is an increasingly booming sector with the state of the world at the moment. Do you see SpaceX moving into weaponized drones?
You certainly ask interesting questions that are impossible to answer. SpaceX is it's the space launch leader. So SpaceX doesn't do drones. SpaceX builds rockets, satellites, and internet terminals. SpaceX has a very dominant position in space launch. So of the mass launch to orbit this year, SpaceX will probably do 90%. China will do the half of the remaining amount, so 5%, and the rest of the world, including the rest of the US, will do about 5%. So SpaceX will do about 10 times as much as the rest of the world combined, or 20 times as much as China, and China is doing actually a very impressive job. The reason for this is that we are putting into orbit the largest satellite constellation the world has ever seen by far. So I think at this point, about maybe approaching 80% of all active satellites in orbit are SpaceX. And they're providing global high bandwidth global connectivity throughout the world. In fact, this connection is on the SpaceX connection. So I think this is a very good thing because it means that we can provide low cost, high bandwidth internet to parts of the world that don't have it or where it's very expensive. And I think the single biggest thing you can do to lift people out of poverty and help them is giving them an internet connection. Because once you have the internet connection, you can learn anything for free on the internet and you can also sell your goods and services to the global market. Once you have knowledge by the internet and the ability to engage in commerce, that this is going to greatly improve quality of life for people throughout the world, and it has. And I'd just like to thank anyone in the audience who may have been helpful in, with Starlink and getting it to approved in their country. And I think it's doing a lot of good in the countries that have approved it, which is, I think at this point, 130 countries are very happy with it. I don't currently anticipate SpaceX getting into the weapons business. That's certainly, it's not an aspiration. We're frequently asked to do weapons programs, but we have thus far declined.
Do you envisage SpaceX or indeed Starlink as a separate entity publicly listing in the near future or at all?
It's possible that Starlink may go public at some point in the future.
And what would be the time frame? What kind of time frame are you considering?
I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush to go public. Public is, I guess, a way to potentially make more money, but at the expense of a lot of public company overhead and inevitably a whole bunch of lawsuits, which are very annoying. So really, something needs to be done about the shareholder derivative lawsuits in the U.S. Because it allows plaintiffs' law firms who don't represent the shareholders to pretend that they represent the shareholders by getting a puppet plaintiff with a few shares to initiate a massive lawsuit against the company. And the irony being that, extreme irony, that even if the class they purport to represent were to vote that they don't want the lawsuit would still continue. So how can it be a class action representing a class if the class vote against it? And that's the bizarre situation we've got in the U.S. It's a dire need of reform. As anyone who's run a public company, you've experienced this. It's an absurd situation that needs to change.
Well, do you think Donald Trump might change it? You've certainly got his ear. I imagine that you've put this to him. Is this something you're trying to change before any Starlink IPO?
Well, it would need a law to be passed. The trouble being that you need 60 Senate votes, and the Democrats will vote against it. The plaintiff's bar is, I believe, the second largest contributor to the Democratic Party. That's the issue. At the state level, this can be solved. And I should say, Texas recently passed a law which, at least the state level, made lawsuits much more reasonable, because you have to get at least 1 in 33 shareholders to agree that they are part of a class of shareholders. 3%. This will really help with frivolous lawsuits.
Okay. Let's talk about AI, which is in so many of your businesses and in all our worlds in different ways. It's one of the big changes, the development of generative AI, since you last spoke to this forum 3 years ago. You're in this space, of course, with Grok, which almost everyone will know. You co-founded OpenAI and then left, and you've obviously got a legal battle with OpenAI and Sam Altman. I wonder if you could say something about the status of that, because you were together in Saudi Arabia with the president last week with Sam Altman. In the same place at the same time.
Sam was in the neighborhood.
Okay, so does that mean you are pushing ahead with the lawsuit against OpenAI?
Yes. So look, I came up with the name OpenAI as an open source and as a nonprofit, and I funded OpenAI for the first roughly $50 million, and it was intended to be a nonprofit open source company, and now they're trying to change that for their own financial benefit into a for-profit company that is closed source. So this would be like, let's say you funded a nonprofit to help preserve the Amazon rainforest, but instead of doing that, they became a lumber company, chopped down the forest, and sold the wood. You'd be like, wait a second, that's not what I funded. That's OpenAI.
They've made some changes to their corporate structure, though, haven't they, since? in recognition of what you've said. And
no, that's just what they told the media.
okay. They have partly walked back their plan to restructure the business. I guess that's made no difference to how you feel about it. So you determined to see them in court?
Of course.
Okay. Well, that's certainly going to be one to watch. I also wanted to ask you about AI and regulation, because when you were here last talking to John Micklethwaite, you had some pretty strong words about the risk that AI poses, and you said that you really felt what the US was missing was a federal AI regulator, that something along the lines of the Food and Drug Administration or the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, you're clearly now in a zone where you're more on the cutting regulation side than wanting new regulators. So has your view changed on the need for an AI regulator?
Well, it's not that I don't think there should be regulators. You can think of regulators like referees on the field in sports. There should be some number of referees, but that you shouldn't have so many referees that you can't kick the ball without hitting one. In most fields in the U.S., the regulatory burden has grown over time to the point where it's like having more referees than players on the field. And this is a natural consequence of an extended period of prosperity. It's very important to appreciate this. This has happened throughout history. When you have an extended period of prosperity with no existential war, there's no cleansing function for unnecessary laws and regulations. So what happens is that every year more laws and more regulations are passed because legislators are going to legislate, regulators are going to regulate, and you'll get the steady pile of more and more laws and regulations over time until everything is illegal. And let me give you an example of a truly absurd situation. Under the Biden administration, SpaceX was sued for not hiring asylum seekers in the US. Now, the problem is it's actually illegal for SpaceX under ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations, to hire anyone who is not a permanent resident of the United States, because the premise being that they will take advanced rocket technology and return to their home country if they're not a permanent resident. So we're simultaneously in a situation where it is illegal to hire asylum seekers, and it is also illegal to hire asylum seekers. And the Biden's Department of Justice chose to prosecute us despite both paths being illegal.
Also, on top of that, as he was saying, they could be a spy and then they could take personal information back to their own country. We have no clue if you're not completing real background checks and just freely letting people in by the millions if they have good intentions or not. So because Elon Musk runs his company legit like that, legally, they are going after him. That is ridiculous.
If you do, damned if you don't.
But my question was specifically about a regulator for AI, which you said 3 years ago was needed, and you said we need to be proactive on the regulation of AI rather than reactive. Have you changed your mind on that?
No, of course not. No, of course not. What I'm saying is that there should be some referees on the field, a few referees, but you shouldn't have a field jam-packed with referees such that you could not kick a ball in any direction without hitting one. So the fields that have been around for a long time, such as automotive, so aerospace, the sort of food and drug industries, are over-regulated, but the new fields, like artificial intelligence, are under-regulated. In fact, there is no regulator at all.
So there should be.
So
Do you still think that?
Yes, I'm simply saying, which I think is just basic common sense, that you want to have at least you want to have a few referees in the field. You don't want to have an army of referees, but you want to have a few referees on any given field, in any given sport, or even any given arena, industrial arena, to ensure that public safety is taken care of, but you don't want to have so there's a proper number of referees. Like I said, it's actually very easy to visualize this when compared to sports. If the whole field is packed with referees, that would look absurd. But if there were no referees at all, your game's not going to be as good.
Okay. So let's then talk about your new world, your role advising government. You are in this unique and unprecedented position of having billions of dollars worth of contracts with the federal government yourself, mostly through SpaceX, and also now an insider's knowledge of it because of Doge. Can you see that there is a conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest in broad terms just through that very fact?
Yet these same journalists disregard everything that was exposed in the Hunter Biden laptop that you can find easily, that Joe Biden was the big guy, yet they completely overlooked that.
I don't think so, actually. There have been many advisors throughout history and in the U.S. government and others who have had economic interests. And I am simply an advisor. I don't have formal power. And that's it. The president can choose to accept my advice or not. And that's how it goes. If there's a single contract that any of my companies have received that people think is somehow not was awarded improperly, it would immediately be front page news, to say the least. And if I didn't mention it, certainly my competitors would. So if you're not seeing that, then clearly there's not a conflict of interest.
There's another way, though, to look at it, that, for example, you have many competitors, whether it's companies like Boeing or companies who would like to do more of the kind of work you do for NASA, Blue Origin, Rocket Lab. And because Doge is in every federal government department, you or people who work for Doge, and you are the driving force behind it, have an insight into those companies' affairs and those companies' relationships with the federal government.
No, all we do is we review the organization to see if the organization has departments that are no longer relevant, and then are the contracts that are being awarded good value for money. In fact, frankly, the bar is not particularly high. Is there any value for money in a contract? And if there isn't, then we make recommendations to the secretary. The secretary can then choose to take those actions or not take those actions, and that's it. And then any action that is as a function of Doge is posted to the Doge website and to the Doge.gov or at Doge handle on the X platform. So it's complete transparency, and I've not seen any case where, to the best of my knowledge, there's even been an accusation of conflict.
And the leftist press corps doesn't even report on any of the posts or findings on the Doge site on X, which they post daily updates on what's being found and what's being exposed.
It's completely and utterly transparent. That's it.
And what about the international dimension? Now, let's think about Starlink. Starlink is obviously a very, very good internet service. It's sought after all over the world. It's critical to the front line in Ukraine. It has also had more contracts coming its way, and there is some evidence that companies are allowing access to it because they want to be close to the Trump administration and send the right signal. So Bloomberg broke news today that the South African government is working around the rules on black ownership in order to allow Starlink in, and that is being done on the eve of the visit that President Ramaphosa is going to make to the White House. Do you recognize that as a conflict of interest?
No, of course not. First of all, you should be questioning why are there racist laws in South Africa? That's the first problem. That's what you should be attacking. It's improper for there to be racist laws in South Africa. The whole idea with what Nelson Mandela, who was a great man, proposed was that all races should be on an equal footing in South Africa. That's the right thing to do, not to replace one set of racist laws with another set of racist laws, which is utterly wrong and improper. So that's the deal, that all races should be treated equally, and there should be no preference given to one or the other. Whereas there are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African, and not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
Well, it looks
Does
like
that
that's
seem
about.
right to you?
Looks
Does
like
that
that.
seem right to you?
Looks like that's about to change.
I just asked you a question. Please answer.
Before she does answer, which she won't, we already know that the Democrats support this because they were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They are obsessed with race. That is all they ever speak about. And if you disagree with their messages, or if you get called racist and you fight, argue back, or defend yourself, then you indeed to them are the racists. And they will try to cancel you at every step of the way.
Does that seem right to you?
Well, those rules were designed to bring
yes or no?
those rules were designed to bring about an era of more economic equality in South Africa, and it looks like the government has found a way around those rules for you.
I'll ask you a question.
This is your interview. Everyone wants to hear from you.
I'll ask you a question. Yes or no?
Not
Racist
for me.
laws, yes or no?
Not for me to answer. I have got a question.
Yes,
for you
she is.
about your government work though and the amount of savings.
Why do you like racist laws?
This is not for me to answer. Come on.
Yes, it is.
Now, you wouldn't be trying to dodge a question.
You have to
that
ask
is
the question.
difficult
I
for you
answer
to
my
answer,
question. No, you answer
Look,
mine.
I think I'm sure you can have that conversation directly with the South African government if you want to. I want to ask you about the total.
I can't believe it. That's not good.
I want to ask you about the total
Why do you love
amount.
racist laws?
I want to ask you about the total amount that you're planning to save through Doge's work. Before the election, you said it was going to be at least 2 trillion. The number currently on doge.gov is $170 billion. That's a big change. What happened to the 2 trillion?
Well, do you expect it to happen immediately?
Well, is it going to happen? Because Doge is supposed to run till next July.
I mean, your question is absurd in its fundamental premise. Are you assuming that on day, within a few months, this an instant 2 trillion saved?
No, I'm not at all. I'm just asking, is that still your aim then? Is it still your aim to get to 2 trillion?
Amount of time? Have we not made good progress given the amount of time?
That's exactly what I'm asking. So is it still your aim to go from 170 billion to 2 trillion?
The ability of Doge to operate is a function of whether the government, and this includes the Congress, is willing to take our advice. We're not the dictators of the government, we are the advisors. And so we can advise, and the progress we've made thus far, I think, is incredible. The Doge team has done incredible work. But the magnitude of the savings is proportionate to the support we get from Congress and from the executive branch of the government in general. So we're not the dictators, we are the advisors. But thus far, for advisors, the Doge team, to their credit, has made incredible progress.
You've talked about $4 billion a day being saved, but that won't get, which is, and I think everyone can agree that combating waste and inefficiency in government is a very good thing. But if you add that up, it's not going to get to 2
If you're a
trillion over the
Democrat.
lifetime of Doge.
I'm sorry.
The 4 billion a day, if Doge is going to run till next July, is not going to get you to $2 trillion.
You said there's.
But you still say it's your aim, so we'll take that as read.
There's what Doge. I mean, I feel you're somewhat trapped in the NPC dialogue tree of a traditional journalist. So
Yes. Typical
when
questions.
with someone who's trapped in the dialogue tree of a conventional journalist, because it's like talking to a computer. Doge is an advisory group. We are doing the best we can as an advisory group. The progress made thus far as an advisory group is excellent. I don't think any advisory group has done better in the history of advisory groups of the government. We do not make the laws, nor do we control the judiciary, nor do we control the executive branch. We are simply advisors. In that context, we are doing very well. Beyond that, we cannot take action beyond that because we are not some sort of imperial dictator of the government. There are 3 branches of the government that are to some degree opposed to that level of cost savings. But nonetheless, let's not criticize whether there's 4 trillion, and instead look at the fact that 160 billion has been saved, and more will be saved too.
And as I said, I think everyone can agree that cutting waste and indeed fraud in any government, and being responsible with taxpayers' money is a very good thing. So
Yes.
I can see that you're proud of that work. I do want to ask you about USAID and the comments that Bill Gates made the other day, which I know.
Did she just bring up Bill Gates? Bill Gates is irrelevant. He is Epstein's right-hand man. He is the one that also worked on injecting these bugs with you know what. Can't mention that on YouTube.
I know that you called him.
Yeah, he's a huge liar.
I know you've said that already.
That's terrible.
Wondered.
Also,
and I'm just.
Who does Bill Gates think he is to make comments about the welfare of children, given that he frequented Jeffrey Epstein?
Okay, well, he said he regrets those, and he spent a lot of his own money on philanthropy around the world over the years. My question to you is, have you looked at the data to check if he might be right that the cuts to USAID might cost millions of lives?
No one believes that.
Yes. I'd like him to show us any evidence whatsoever that is true. It's false. What we found with USAID cuts, and by the way, they haven't all been cut. The parts of USAID that were found to be even slightly useful were transferred to the State Department. So they've not been deleted. They've simply been transferred to the State Department. But many times over with USAID and other organizations, when they said, "Oh well, this is going to help, children, or it's going to help some disease eradication or something like that," and then when we ask for any evidence whatsoever, I say, "Well, please connect us with this group of children so we can talk to them and understand more about their issue." We get nothing. They don't even try to come up with a show orphan, meaning like this sort of like, well, can we at least see a few kids? Like, where are they? If they're in trouble, we'd like to talk to them and talk to their caregivers. Okay, well, and then we get
because it's a lie.
Response, because it's what we find
Fake
is an
news.
enormous amount of fraud and graft.
Okay, let me put this example to you.
Very little of it actually gets to the kids, if anything at all.
Okay, let me put this example to you, because you grew up in South Africa, so you'll know the impact of HIV/AIDS well. And this is why I asked about the data. The US led on international efforts to combat HIV/AIDS treatment, prevention, and there's an initiative called PEPFAR, which is credited with saving 26 million lives in the last 20 years. It was part of the foreign aid freeze. Then there was a limited waiver. Its services are disrupted. And UN aid says if permanently discontinued, there will be another 4 million AIDS-related deaths by 2029. So if you look at that example, which is backed up by data, in 2023, 630,000 people died of AIDS-related illnesses, then perhaps Bill Gates's figures are not wrong. Millions of lives could be lost.
First of all, the program, the AIDS medication program is continuing. So your fundamental premise is wrong. It is continuing. Now, do you have another example?
Elon, not in its entirety.
That is false.
Not in its entirety. The program, there's a limited waiver, and UNAIDS have said that not all of the services that were previously funded by USAID are continuing. So that's why I put that example to you.
Okay.
That's a lie. She knows it's a lie. USAID is exposing nothing but fraud, billions and trillions overseas for BS that we, the people, never voted on.
Well, which ones aren't being funded? I'll fix it right now.
Okay. Well, actually, they're all on the UNAIDS website, so you'll be able to see them. But mostly they are to do with prevention. And for example, the rollout of a drug called lenacapavir, which was hailed as one of the biggest breakthroughs against AIDS for many years, which came out last year. So if you are, perhaps, I'm sure UNAIDS would be delighted if you're able to look at that again.
Yes, but well, if in fact this is true, which I doubt it is, then we'll fix it.
Okay, fine. So finally, your political influence. I wondered whether you have decided yet how much you're going to spend on the upcoming midterms. Is it You spent a lot more money on the last US election than you envisaged when you were speaking here 3 years ago. Are you going to continue to spend at that kind of level on future elections?
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
What about political influence beyond the US? How often do you speak to President Putin?
I don't speak to President Putin.
You've never spoken to President Putin?
I was on a video call with him once about 5 years ago.
That's the only.
Why would you think I speak to President Putin? Oh, you must. Oh, I get it.
Because
You
I've
believe
heard
the
you
legacy.
speak. Actually, I've heard you speak about it. For example, in your West Point speech, you said, "Oh, I challenged President Putin to was it an arm wrestle?" And I know the Wall Street Journal has reported your reported conversation.
Not a good source.
If you're saying they haven't happened other than once, I'll take that as read.
Is there a worse publication on the face of the earth than the Wall Street Journal? I wouldn't use that to line up my cage for paratraffics. That newspaper is the worst newspaper in the world, if there's one newspaper that should be pro-capitalist, it's the one with Wall Street in the name, but it isn't. So I have the very lowest opinion of the Wall Street Journal. Absolute nonsense, and you clearly believe the tripe that you've written, that you've read in those papers.
I read very widely, and I'm putting these questions to you so that you have an opportunity to respond to them, which you are, and for which we're all grateful to hear your responses.
Yes.
Okay, we are out of time. So
you mentioned me challenging. I did so on.
That's the end of that one. They ask an AI question at the end. Don't ask them anymore after that. But interesting debate, talks about Doge, USAID, and more. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a great night, guys. Peace.